everybody, Aaron J. Anderson here. Today we're going to talk about lenses and the lenses that I use. And of course, like anybody you can listen to, my lenses that I use might work for you, they might not work for you. All depends on what you shoot and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go into the lenses. First of all, when you first get into photography or videography, and this is for both photos and video, by the way, you're probably going to get a camera, and it's probably going to come with a kit lens. And the kit lens is almost always an f3.5 to an f5.6, and those f are the aperture. F is how much light comes in through the front of the camera, and that's your stops. And just for those of you who don't know, if you're new to this, the smaller the aperture, the bigger the number. So an f5.6 would be something like that, let's say. And of course, I'm exaggerating here. And let's say f3.5 would be a little more open, and an f1.8, and it just gets wider. So you always want to try to get the fastest lens you could afford, because that's going to have the aperture wider to let more light in, and your backgrounds are blurrier. So when you first start out, you probably get a lens that is a 3.56 to an f5.6, which means it's not constant either. So if you're all the way wide at, let's say, I don't know, like this lens here, 14 millimeters, it is f3.5, and as you zoom in, the aperture starts to close automatically to an f5.6. Your image is going to get darker, right? So you probably have a kit lens, and when I first started, I figured out real fast that I need something that's faster. And they call it faster because the more light you let in, the faster you can put the shutter speed, which makes your image darker. But because you can go with the faster shutter speed, you can capture action quicker. So by having more light come in, you have the ability to increase your shutter speed to make it shooting faster action. So that's terminology they chose. So whatever. Your goal when doing photos or video is to keep the ISO or the ISO as low as possible at the base level. And on my Panasonic GX8 and GX85 and G7 and all those, the lowest ISO was 200. Now they do have a feature that you can go lower than that, but then you're going to introduce noise and other little things might be happening. I do use those occasionally, but you want to stay at the base ISO and the lowest ISO, because once you start increasing ISO to make your image brighter, you're going to introduce noise, and the color is going to start going on you, and basically every time you increase the ISO, your video or photo is going to look crappier, to put it in a good term, good way. So you want to use 200 ISO at all times if you can. So you got your kit lens, f3.5 to f5.6, and you're going to find out, like I did real quick, that you need something faster, because even in a situation that you wouldn't consider low light, you're going to say that, oh my gosh, my ISO is really high, and your images are going to look quite crappy. So what you want to do, where do I start? I always run into these videos like, I'm leaving the house in an hour, let's do this. So forgive me. This is on the back of your camera. You have a meter like this. This is your light meter. And if you're perfectly exposed, meaning your camera is on this right here, it's evaluating. This is your, what do you call that? Your exposure meter. When you see this type of an icon, it's exposing for the entire scene. It's looking at everything in the scene and then coming up with the proper exposure. So when your camera is set right here, you're at perfect exposure, and as you go this way, you start getting overexposed. We got 1 stop overexposed, 2 stops overexposed, 3 stops overexposed, and it can just keep going on and on. And this way, we're going 1 stop underexposed, 2 stops underexposed, 3 stops underexposed. The image is getting darker this way, and the image is getting brighter this way, and in the middle, you're golden, pretty much. But you have to use your eye and common sense too. This doesn't always mean that what you want exposed is exposed, but that's for another video. And so that's how you kind of read your light meter there. So what happens is when you have a scene, and let me find out the first scene. Now I'm going to show you that some people are going to say you need to get a faster lens, and probably a zoom lens, and they're going to say you need a constant aperture, meaning instead of going from a f3.5 and as you zoom in it automatically goes darker to a f5.6 or whatever, a constant aperture would be like, let's say, an f4 lens, zoom lens, which means its widest aperture is f4, and as you zoom in it doesn't change the f-stop, so the image isn't going to get darker. Or you can get a zoom lens that's like an f2.8 constant, which means it's f2.8, and as you zoom in it doesn't get darker, the aperture doesn't change. And a lot of people will say that even in lens reviews, like on B&H, you know, you'll read a lens review on a lens that is like a zoom lens that's f2.8, and people say, ooh, it's great in low light. f2.8 really isn't all that good in low light, in my opinion, and I don't know if other people agree with that or not, but in my situations, I'm going to show you what I mean by f2.8 not being all that good, and I'm going to show you why I shoot prime lenses. And this is the first, let me see if I can bring this photo up. This is the first scene I'm going to show you. Now this is a little scene I set up here. What you're looking at now is how my eyeball's seen it. And we're looking at light, not noise and all that good stuff, but it's part of the situation, I guess, here. So this is how my eyeball's seen it, and it looks decently exposed. But for me, I would probably want it, in reality, as far as doing a photo shoot or something, I would probably want it brighter. And if you get an f2.8 lens, I'm going to show you how even in the middle of the day, this is shot at like 2 o'clock, the sun is actually over here from my house, and on the side here, maybe about, I would say 5 feet, are big glass windows, and so there is light coming in. Now, however, when I did this, it was a little overcast, so you're not seeing super bright light coming in here, but nonetheless, what if you were to shoot this scene at this time of day? This is the time you chose to do this scene, your models came, or you're going to plan your photo shoot or your video or whatever, and this is the scene you get. This is what it looks like with my eyeballs. Now, how I did these is I set up the shutter speed on the camera at 50th of a second. Now, when you're doing video and you're shooting 24p, you want to double that to 48th of a second, but most cameras don't have 48, so you go to the next closest thing, which is 50th of a second. And that's so that your motion blur looks good to your eye. 24p, you should shoot double that. If you're shooting 30p, double that would be 60th of a second, and so forth. So why I'm choosing this is just because in case you're watching this and you want to know this for a video as well, that's why I chose 50th of a second. Now, if you're on a tripod and you're shooting photography, you can always slow down that shutter speed, letting in more light. So whatever your f-stop of your lens is, you can, in photography, you have that flexibility to really slow down your shutter speed to absorb more light, making the scene brighter. But for the analogy of this whole test here, because I know a lot of people watching this do video as well, we're just going to keep it at 50th of a second. And that's actually, that's kind of a slow shutter speed for if there's moving objects. If you're doing photography and let's say this scene here, let's say something was moving here, well, you probably wouldn't want to go much lower than 50th of a second anyways, because then this will be blurry even if you're on a tripod. So let's go. This is what it looked like. Now, this next photo is, let's pull up the info here. Now, this here is what it looks like if you went out and you have your kit lens, and you can see the metadata over here. This is, see, we're at 50th of a second. We're at 5.6. So if you have a kit lens and you zoom in, you're going to get a f-stop of 5.6. That's as much light as that aperture is going to bring in at 50th of a second and at your ideal ISO of 200. 200 is our goal. We don't always get there, but that's our goal. So how much ISO should we put into this settings to make a proper exposure? Well, I did that. This would be a proper exposure. Now, this is brighter than what my eye's seen, right? But this is probably ideal, how I would, pretty close I would want to see an image or create an image. But look at the ISO. We're at 3200 ISO. 3200 ISO on these mirrorless cameras is really the max that I would want to shoot at. if you're looking at the photo, as long as it's perfectly exposed at 3200 ISO, it doesn't look that bad. But if you're doing video, you're going to see the noise moving around, and if you're going to do photos and if you're going to blow it up or anything, you're going to see the noise. Or if you're going to crop, you're going to see the noise. And if you're taking a photo of a person that's like a full body shot, let's say, and you zoom into a medium shot, it's just going to be all crummy, their face. It's not going to look that good. So for me, 3200 ISO is the absolute limit, and if I ever have to shoot that high, I try to find, hey, let's do this some other way, because 3200 is just not good. So that's what you would get with a f5.6 in this scenario. So if we go to the next one, which is, what did I put this one at? Now this is an f4. So this is as if you saved up some money to get a zoom lens that is an f4 constant lens, because someone told you you should get an f4 lens. It's better than your kit lens. It's better for low light. Well, an f4 isn't that great for low light anyways, and we're talking about mirrorless cameras here, not full frame cameras. So at f4, this is what it looks like at 200 ISO. It's still way underexposed. So this next shot is, how high of an ISO do I have to set my camera in order to get a proper exposure? And this is actually a perfect exposure on the light meter, by the way. Remember when I showed you the other photo with the 0 in the middle of the light meter, perfectly exposed? We're at up here at 2000 ISO, which is still too high, because for me, the highest I would want to shoot any of my cameras is 1600 ISO. And even at that, I'm like, that's not good. Remember, we want to shoot at 200 ISO to have a nice, clean, beautiful image. 1600 ISO is still too high for me, but that's, if I'm shooting weddings and there's just a shot at 1600 ISO, okay, I can deal with that, but I really want to get that lower. So anyways, this is at 2000 ISO, so this is still too high for me to be shooting my professional work. So the next shot here is at f3.5. So if you have a kit lens and you're zoomed all the way out, maybe you're at a 24 millimeter on your lens, you know, after the crop and all that stuff, you're at f3.5. This is 200 ISO, which would be our goal. Well, how high of an ISO would we need to go to get this perfect shot here? We're at 1600 ISO, so now we are at that limit, that top limit that I would ever want to shoot at, and I wouldn't do a photo shoot knowing that all my photos are going to be at 1600 ISO. That's way too far from perfect from a 200 ISO. And remember, what I'm showing you here, this is daylight. This is not low light shooting, you know. Remember, someone might have talked you into getting a zoom lens at f2.8 because it's great for low light, but it's better than low light than your kit lens, but it's not great for low light really in most situations. And I'm showing you here daylight time at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in my house. Your house might be brighter, who knows, but it's not that good, f2.8 for low light. It's better than your kit lens. So anyways, let's move on here. So this one here is, now if you saved up your money and got your zoom lens at f2.8, like someone might have said, hey, get an f2.8, it's great for low light. Well, you can see here, it's still not that great in low light, as you can see right here. This is, if I brought up, actually this is a little brighter than what my eyes seen at 2.8, but still, it's still underexposed at 200 ISO. So how much ISO should we put into this to get a perfect exposure? 800 ISO. So 800 ISO in the middle of the day with a little bit of overcast with windows. I mean, I've got big glass doors not too far off the side here, like maybe 6 feet. So you would walk into this house here and think it's not a low light situation, but when you have an f2.8 lens, you're going to find yourself like, wow, I have to boost all the way up to 800 ISO. This isn't even considered low light shooting. Think about it, it's really not. So let's go to the next step. So this is an f2 lens, because there's some popular prime lenses out there that are f2, and this is what the scene looks like at 200 ISO. We're getting pretty close. It doesn't look bad, but it's still underexposed at our perfect 200 ISO. So how much ISO should we put into this one? Well, 500 ISO. We're still kind of high, but at least we're not close to the 1600 ISO max that I would use. So at f2, we're getting a 500 ISO. not too bad. What happens if we just go to, like my prime lenses at f1.7 at f200? How much ISO do we need to put into it to get perfect? At 400 ISO. So now we're getting pretty close to my perfect 200 ISO. So now you're starting to see why I had the 35, what is it called? The Panasonic 35 to 100 millimeter f2.8 zoom lens, and I raved about it. It's awesome. It's actually my second copy. My first copy I did a video if you want to go check that out. It was when I was in Alaska and Canada. Maybe I'll pop the video up somewhere or something. And I solely used that camera. 2 shots I used an iPhone for that I couldn't get wide. And so for outside, 2.8 is great, and it's a beautifully sharp lens. It's amazing. But once you start doing event work or weddings, because you might hear professional wedding photographers using f2.8 zoom lens, most of them guys are using full frame cameras. So keep that in mind. So with a full frame censored camera, you're going to get better light capabilities out of that. But with micro four thirds, got to rethink that f2.8, and that's why I ended up going with these lenses here, which we're going to keep going here just because I want to prove to you that f2.8 lenses aren't that great even when you do this. So that's scene number 1. Let's go to scene number 2 right here. Let's get rid of that scene there. What is that? Oh. Okay, so now this, let's switch over. We're not gonna go through this real quick, but this is what my eye seen on scene number 2. This is just in another part of my house in broad daylight. There's a little bit of a haze outside, so it's not direct sunlight outside, but the sun is on this side of the house. And the other scene was actually to the right, like in a adjacent room over here, but we still got that same type of window set up behind the camera, but now it's maybe about 15 feet away, and you could see, you know, it's kind of dark, even though you wouldn't think of shooting inside a house in the middle of the day being, you know, low light. Here's an f5.6 at 200 ISO. You can't even see the scene. We have to go all the way up to 6400 ISO just to be able to get a perfect exposure with your kit lens zoomed in. With an f4 lens, that's 200 ISO, we have to go up to 3200. We're going to go through these quick. Here's your kit lens at 3.5 wide open, zoomed all the way, you know, to the widest. 200 ISO, it's still way underexposed. We have to go way up to 2500 ISO just to get the image. Now here's your f2.8 zoom lens that you saved up for because people said it's great in low light. And this isn't really a low light situation as you would think of it. Most people think of like, it's like nighttime or it's really dark out, low light situation. Well, low light situation can mean a whole different thing when you start looking at it. f2.8, we got to go up to 1600 ISO even with an f2.8 zoom lens. Here's an f2. Let's just go down to f1.7. Now these are how the primes that I've got, 1.7, 200 ISO. If I have to get a perfect exposure, it's at 640 ISO. That's still well below the 1600 ISO that I told you I would max out on. So these prime lenses that I got are f1.7. They actually work most of the time, keeping me under 1600 ISO, where f2.8 doesn't work for me most of the time indoor shooting without flash and all that stuff. But I will light my scenes anyways. But for you guys just getting into it, thinking you're going to get an f2.8 lens and have good low light shooting without lighting, you know, think twice about it. I had this one photo here and I don't know why I downloaded it. I guess I can show you how this, you know, the f-stops work. Here's f5.6, that's your kit lens. And one stop better than that would be an f4. And anytime you go one stop brighter, even though you have the number 1, one stop is actually twice as bright. So if you go from here's the f3.5 on the low end of your kit lens. So let's say you're at a 5.6 and you go and then you go with a constant aperture zoom lens of an f2.8. Well, that's 2 stops. So that means your scene is going to get 4 times brighter because one stop is 2 times brighter, and then that's another stop for another 2 times brighter. So you're going to get 4 times the amount of light So it's basically like your room being 4 times brighter with a 2.8. Now that 2.8 going to all the way up here to a 1. Well, my lenses are 1.7, like right in between this here. Well, let's just say 1.8 because we can see it here. 2.8 to a 2.0 is double the amount of light, and then you got about a third stop more light. So going from an f2.8 to the primes, you just like a little more than doubled the amount of light in your room. So it's a pretty big deal going even from a f2.8 zoom to these primes. You're getting a little more than brightening the whole room up, twice. It's double the amount of light. So it's pretty interesting. Now, what I wanted to show you, we can just see real quick at where this is the 14 to 140 millimeter zoom lens, and if I open the aperture all the way up at f3.6, this actually starts at 3.6, not 3.5. Yeah. Okay. Now, if I zoom in, we can get, so if you have a kit lens kind of like this same aperture, if I zoom into 25 millimeters, it might be a little less than that, but 25 millimeters, which with the crop factor, you're about 50 millimeter. I would say you would probably use that most of the time on your kit lens, just because 50 millimeters is doesn't look too wide and wonky looking. It looks decent. You're at an f4 already just by going to 25. On this lens, it doesn't get to the 5.6 until you zoom all the way in. Then you're at your f5.6, the darkest. Why I got this lens is because zoom lenses come in real handy when I'm out doing my photo work for sporting events. I do a lot of sporting events for sports, like those survivor type races where people go through mud and barbed wire and over hay bales and all that stuff. Out in the daylight, this is perfect. I mean, I got a 14 millimeter shot to get like the monkey bar scene, and I can zoom into 200, well, after the crop 28 millimeters, I can zoom into 280 millimeters to get their face all grunting and all that stuff. So running gun outside, this lens is bright enough outside. It's great, and I love this lens. So that's why I use this lens. Now, this lens on the GX8 and the G7, from what I've heard, has a lot of shutter shock. I have not used it on this GX8. I did, however, start using it on the the G85 that has 90% less shutter shock. So that lens on here works really good. So that's why I got this zoom lens, because it's, 14, it's amazing. And actually, if we go ahead and let's just put it on this. I did this in a video. I don't know if I posted it yet. Maybe in the future I'll post it. But this is such a small little package. I've got a quick plate on here. Small little package. And apparently there shouldn't be any shutter shock on here, but I have to do more tests. But I did take this out for one of those events, and wide shot, boom, and a dual IS. It's a beautiful lens for that type of work. It's also a great lens if you're doing model shoots and you want compression. You zoom all the way in and back up to, however wide you want to get on the model, and you have really good compression with that. So that's why I have that lens, and I replaced the 35 to 100 f2.8 with this lens because I didn't want to give up the compression and the reach and all that. But these lenses, the 42.5 image stabilized, which on this lens on this camera we got dual IS. It's at f1.7, super sharp, super light, super small, and this, like I just showed you, is good for most situations shooting indoors, as I showed you, where an f2.8 is, you're going to be cranking that ISO up to the limits where I'd want to go. And then another lens I have is the Panasonic 20 millimeter f1.7. I probably use this lens for all my work. If I have to back up, I back up. I zoom with my feet. If I can't get wide enough, then I put this on. I'm at the same f-stop and everything, so none of my flashes change. Nothing changes because they're the same f-stop. And then I have this 9 millimeter Olympus lens. This lens is pretty sharp in the middle. It's kind of blurry on the sides. I'll use this for just very special type photography, or if there's just something I just can't get far enough back with the 20 millimeter, which is a 40 millimeter on a after you do the crop. I use that lens, which is a 14 millimeter after the crop. 42.5 millimeter, that is an 85 millimeter on a full frame equivalent. And how these f-stops also work is, since we're on micro four thirds, you got to remember that the f-stop number that's listed on the lens is the amount of light coming through this. So this is an f1.7 amount of light coming in, but as blurry background is concerned, you always got to multiply that by the 2 times crop. So this would be an f1.7 as far as light is considered, but it's, let's just see so I don't get this wrong and have to post a fix-it text. And where am I? Here's my button. So if we are at, you know, f1.7, if you times that by 2, we got a 3.4. So we are shallow depth of field, full frame of an f3.4. Sorry. So keep that in mind. Now, real quick, when I'm, how far do I want to go into this? I don't know. This lens is great for those sporting events. I might as well say this because at f5.6, which I'll probably keep it at f5.6 so when I zoom out, my lighting doesn't change. I'll set the aperture at f5.6 and then all my other things to get the proper exposure. That way when I zoom in and out, it's not going to change. And 5.6 is great for sporting type stuff because even when you zoom into 280, when you get like a medium shot or a close medium, you're going to have pretty blurry backgrounds, but because you have a lot of depth of field there, I'm going to nail the shot because I don't want to have some action going like, oh, look at that mud splash, and you take a shot and you're shooting an f2.8 or lower and you missed the focus or they moved by the time you focus. Well, have an f5.6, you have that leadway of focus, so you, them, and everything in between can be in focus and you always nail the shot. So that's another reason. And being that this is an f3.4 as far as blurriness is concerned on a full frame, that's actually pretty good for me. I like it because you can be open to 1.7 and have that amount of light come in, but have enough depth of field that when you focus on your model, if she moves a little far back or a little forward or you adjust a little bit, there's a good chance that if you focused on her eye, you'll still be in focus, whereas if you're on a full frame at, let's say, f1.7, that the depth of field is so shallow that if you focus on her or his eye and you move just a little bit, the eyeball can go soft. So micro four thirds camera is really nice for that, where you're getting that light, the same amount of light, but the depth of field is a little more. So I don't know what else to say. One other thing I just wanted to mention is if you look at a lot of my work, and I've said this so many times, I say, I guess because if someone's new watching this, they understand. I did most of my work, I would say in the last maybe 5 years, maybe more, with just these 2 focal lengths. Really, 20 millimeter, which is a 40 millimeter, and a 45. I used to use the Olympus, but this one's actually better, the Panasonic 42.5. And the Olympus 45 millimeter or 42, it's like an 85 equivalent, 40 equivalent. I use these predominantly for everything I do. Maybe I'll link the videos below or show them up here of things that I only use these 2. So for me, just using these 2 lenses do me good, and I know that's kind of strange. A lot of professionals use all kind of different lenses, and you can. You use whatever you want, whatever works for you. I like having very minimal equipment. I like to get in fast, get out quick, and all that stuff. And recently, I did add the zoom because I do miss the compression from these. So now I have compression, and I've just in the last maybe 2 years, I started doing the sports, and this is great for sports. And I don't know. I guess that's it, guys. If you have any questions, leave some comments. Aaron J. Anderson, talk to you later. Bye-bye.